Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to CxO Global's webinar today on a very trending topic, which is generative AI in banking. AI, as we all know, is a buzzword these days. It stands for artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence itself is a very wide term. In fact, last week I attended uh, a show. I attended in person a show organized by CxO Global together with Excellence Delivered, and it was on artificial intelligence. And it's mind boggling when it's such a deep topic, and the pace at which we're seeing developments in this topic is so fast, it's mind boggling. Today's topic is particularly interesting. It's a more niche topic because we're not just talking about AI, we're talking about generative AI and in the banking sector. So we're waiting for one more panelist to join us, but while we wait for her, she's actually based outside Pakistan. Let me introduce our guests for today's webinar, Mr. Faysal Ghauri and Mr. Arslan Nayyar. I will hand over the floor to each of them so they could introduce themselves and give a brief background. Faysal sir, over to you first.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Sahar, for brief introduction. And definitely, it is very interesting topic we are going to discuss. And definitely, I am going to learn a lot from Arslan and other panelists as well as you. My brief introduction: I live in Riyadh. I working for the FANUUN Business Consulting Group, which is the technology consulting group, and we work in different areas, including the AI and customized AI. Including generative AI as well.
Thank you for joining us today and taking out the time. You're also based outside Pakistan. Mr. Arslan Nayyar.
Assalamualaikum everybody. I'm Arslan Nayyar. I'm also based in Riyadh, and I'm basically a corporate investment banker by profession. And during my 21 years of career in banking, I worked in different banks and I've worked in different departments as well as I'm also been part of implementing credit IT modules in different banks. So where I got exposure to one of the latest trending credit analysis and credit side systems, which are largely now recent one are largely based on AI. So this is my experience.
Thank you for joining us today. And it's very interesting that both of you, in fact, all three guests today I have are based outside Pakistan, which sort of validates what I said earlier, that this is a buzzword globally. In fact, in the morning today, I was reading that Saudi Arabia is focusing its investment avenues in technological sector. It's actually looking at the most rapidly evolving spaces in the tech sector, and that's where it wants to invest outside its own country. So Saudi's foreign investment goals this year are in sectors that we've just spoken about, including AI. But this I sort of went off on a tangent. I think the first question, and I think this question will be on anybody's mind who read about today's webinar, is what is generative AI? I mean, we know AI is artificial intelligence, but what exactly is generative AI? Anybody, please. It's since we're a small forum today, the floor is open.
Well, basically, in very simple terms, AI means any system that learns from the data given to it, and in the supervised manner. Whereas generative AI is the system or the capability of a system that it can create its own data, as well as it also makes its own learning in supervised and unsupervised manner. So basically, we can say that it can take own decisions as well, the generative AI. And whereas the AI has very limited capacity to make a decision on its own if the new data or information is given.
Okay, that's very interesting. And I think this also sort of ties to what I said about what I mentioned earlier about AI, that we saw AI, right? We saw AI being introduced in the world and in the market, but now we're seeing a lot of advancement in every technological sector, especially AI. So when you say that AI needs supervision and generative AI can sort of take decisions on its own, it sounds very interesting. So if you could give perhaps a practical example, you or Faisal.
Okay, I can give example from my own industry. Basically, if you're looking at fraud detection and customer service uh, analytics, so then you have to rely on AI because it is a set form of parameters given to the system, and based on that, it analyzes the data and gives you a result. Whereas if you're looking for something, for example, very much creative, and then a data is given and you give a capability to a system that this is a data, this is evolving. I want you to understand it and evolve a new data, and based on that, give me a new output. For example, generative AI is very much common in the creative industry, where a certain parameters or the picture or representation is given, and based on that, the system has been asked to develop new product or a new picture or a new anything that is more creative in nature.
Okay, so I'm a lawyer by profession. I always forget to introduce myself. I'm sorry. My name is Sahar. I am a lawyer by profession. I'm a corporate lawyer. And while I do hear of these terms, my knowledge is certainly not as intrinsic, not as deep as yours. So for me, when I think about I think about ChatGPT, etc. So in which category do we place ChatGPT? Or some of the other more recent forms of AI we've seen?
Let me
Faisal,
take
would you like
this.
to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Arslan. First of all, Sahar, let me change the language. Let's go to Urdu as our normal language, part of the conversation as a CxO Global Forums.
Sorry, no, Faisal Saab, the reason why I was, and please feel free to speak in Urdu, the reason why I started in English is because, as you know, we have an international audience. So, for the
Okay.
benefit
Okay.
of everybody. Yeah.
No problem. No problem. Because in all the previous, they usually promote the Urdu, so I thought this is the same.
No,
But
no, of
never mind.
course. I mean,
So I
please
was
feel free. It's just that we want to sort of widen our audience, and
no
because
problem
it's a
at all.
Pakistani platform, we want to reach our international audience as well.
No problem at all. So before answering your question or before going into the detail, you touched the investment from the Saudi. So you missed Saudi have funds only for AI for $50 billion, and by
Yes.
2030 they are expanding to $150 billion. So this is the amount of the investment they are putting on the AI itself, not only other technologies. Because you are
Wow.
talking about the technology, we are talking only specific to AI, and that's why they are working with different vendors. Aramco partnership for quantum computing, and they recently announced one program for quantum computing. Now coming back to generative AI and versus the traditional AI. So traditional AI is basically where we are talking about typical classification, prediction, or recognition of something like text or picture. This is the traditional AI. However, the once we move to generative AI, then it has, as Arsan mentioned, it is under supervision or without supervision. It can create based on their own training model and based on their own data set. It can create new content or new uh, direction of the data as well. Usually there are two kind of models in the generative AI, which is we call it GAN, generative adversarial networks, and second is the variational autoencoders network. So these two models basically work as a technical terms. They work to prepare the generative AI. Now you ask the question ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is basically generative AI, which is for public, where they have unlimited set of data available for everyone. Now they are customizing this in a sense where you have your own data set or you have your own LLM where you can train your own chat GPT mode.
Yes, thank you. That's very helpful. And it's just, again, it's especially when based in Pakistan, when we hear about the sizable amount of investments in a particular sector, it's just, it gives us more impetus to make sure that as a country, we also sort of reach those levels of development. Alia has joined us today as well. I've had the pleasure of speaking to Alia once before in another webinar. So Alia, if you could just briefly please introduce yourself. And we started off, as you know, the topic of today's webinar is generative AI in banking. And we just started with our first question, which was, what is the difference between AI and generative AI?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sahar. And my name is Alia Zafar. I'm working with Commonwealth Secretariat. I'm based out of London, and I've been working like 29 years now in Pakistan, outside Pakistan. One of my areas of expertise is digital transformations. I've been working in banking for a long time as well, before I joined the Commonwealth Secretariat. This is an area in terms of AI, especially on the ethical governance component of it, that I've been actively engaged with, and I'm already like currently working on this as well. So if you have responded to the questions, it's great. Just one thing that I would like to add here on generative AI. I think it differs, of course, from the traditional AI models, which are essentially typically designed to perform specific tasks. And those tasks are based on pre-programmed algorithms and rules. Whereas the generative AI, from a common person's perspective, it's like a child. What does a child do? A child absorbs language. How does a child absorb the language? It has its own brain creating networks, and those neural networks, when created, are enhancing not one step at a time, but in a very interesting way, from one conversation, one sentence, one word, to having a conversation which creates its own logic. Children are able to do that naturally. So there's a natural thing which already we see, and the tool that is used is language. So language becomes the most important and extremely interesting tool, which is utilized by ChatGPT and other such generative AIs. They are using these machine learning models. Deep learning. They learn patterns, they learn structures, but they're using the neural network approach towards learning, which becomes extremely interesting because at the end of the day, it's going to enhance, and it is enhancing as we speak in terms of its own capacity. So the capacity is enhanced literally every second, what to say of minutes or hours, which for us common persons means that there's a lot happening. And how do we actually look at it from the perspective of utilizing it as a tool wherever we may be working, especially in terms of banking, how we can take it forward. So back to everyone now. I think I've had my say on the first part of it.
I think we lost the connection with the moderator. She
Right.
was.
We can moderate ourselves.
Yes, why not? Why not?
Because
Arslan could be a good moderator. I know.
Then we do something,
Arslan is here. He's a good moderator. He can do some magic.
Okay. I think the next thing we can discuss until we have.
Or we can discuss ourselves in terms of the use cases in terms of the banking, because this is the topic where we can discuss what are the use cases we can apply in the banking with the generative AI.
Yeah.
So Alia,
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry, I didn't let you guys take my place. I was waiting for Sohail Saab to let me in. Alia, I heard everything that you had to say, and it's actually very fascinating to understand how it works. And I think it's very important for layman like myself to understand how it works in practice and to appreciate the nuances, etc. And just sort of so taking that, we've sort of hopefully we've all understood what is generative AI, how it differs from traditional AI. And now focusing on today's topic at hand, which is generative AI in banking. Now, Arslan, I know he mentioned he actually has relevant experience as far as this is concerned. So does Faisal and Ali. I'm sure you, with your wealth of knowledge. So, what are the primary applications of generative AI in the banking sector? Arslan, I think you touched upon this earlier. So, if you want to deep dive.
Yes, basically the kind of AI system that I've seen are basically one are related to retail banking, which is basically more of a customer service oriented. Secondly, recently what AI has developed that a lot of companies have developed AI system which are more towards the credit function. So basically, we give the financial statements to the this system. It analyzes it, gives you the ratios and everything, and also give you a write up on it. But right now, what we are facing the issue in this that there also a certain human element part of it, which information is basically not given in the data. It's beyond the data. So that element is not captured. So this is where the limitation of the generative AI in the banking in the credit function of a banking system is. So yes, it saves a lot of time. It gives you an error-free ratio analysis and everything, but the judgmental credit analysis in the write-up still requires some human element part of it, which right now I believe, or most of the bankers believe, is not still not covered.
Shall I add something here, Sahar?
Please.
Because me and Arslan both are from similar industry or background, so
That's,
that's why
I was,
I would like
yes.
to add. Yeah.
Yes, I was just
So
going to ask you
Arslan,
to add.
Arslan, the issue here is with the generative AI is the cost. Cost of the generative AI or training the model is very high. So small size of the banks are unable to absorb this such kind of cost. Now vendors are coming into the market, like HP is bringing AI on the cloud, where you can train your model on the cloud and then you can bring it on prem later stage. So unless this cost is not going to bring down, such kind of solution which you are looking for will take some time. So for example, I know in Saudi Arabia, Raji Bank is having their own AI where they are training a lot of use cases. Riyadh Bank and SNB are doing the similar things, but small banks like Bilad and other banks, they are struggling because of the cost. Other use cases, as you mentioned, one of the use case, customer service, we have developed one of the solution which intelligent automation with the help of the AI, where you tackle all end-to-end customer services with the generative AI, and just you just need to approve or reject the response. You are going to send it to the all of your customers about their complaints. Then earlier you touched fraud detection and prevention, which is one of the very strong use case of generative AI. Document processing, intelligent automation, which I was talking. This is one of the very interesting area. One of the study of the JP Morgan, where they are interpreting complex legal documents through this generative AI, and they have saved more than $20 billion annually with this kind of AI implementation. Then you can do, as you mentioned, for credit facility, you can do the financial forecasting as well with the help of the generated AI. And most importantly, synthetic data generation. This is one of the best side of the generative AI.
May I just add
Yes, I
something?
told.
Please.
Yeah, please.
So the way I see there are, and I've just sort of noted down some of the problems and some of the solutions which are already there, and some of the banks are already using it as well. So when we talk about generative AI at work, we need to sort of segregate it into front office, middle office, and what we call back office, which is essentially the enabler offices. I'd never call it a back office. So there are three components which are working, and in the bigger banks, even in Pakistan, there have been components which have been added on to the already existing technology and systems interventions. So some of the things that I've seen or experienced in some of the bigger banks. So fraud detection and prevention is one area where it is being co-piloted, used to some extent. When we say that it's used, how do we use it? Internationally, AI can analyze transactions transaction patterns, identify anomalies, and some of these components are already present in Pakistan. Then anti-money laundering compliance, large data sheets. Essentially, that large data is something that AI has been able to sort of utilize, and there is some component of regulations connected with it, and that element is available currently in some banks. The third one, I think, is on chatbots and virtual assistants. Some banks are working on it, others may not be. But when we look at the front office, the virtual bankers, for example, that you see within even in our region, we don't see that for now. So because of the cost element, because these are really expensive. The middle office, where you have the investment trading, or you have the payment collections, or you have the treasury, so some elements of AI you can see over there. So that's the middle office is where most of, I would say, generative AI application is happening right now. The enabler offices, risk management, for example, or finance compliance, or HR, or technology and security. In security, you will see a little bit of it. In the risk, you will see a little bit of it. In compliance, you will see a bit of it. It's not where it needs to be, but they're sort of trying to work towards it. Front office is where it's really not there fully. To some extent, you can say that's the gap that we see in the Pakistan market. And a lot of it can actually be more interesting in terms of how our population is actually not educated enough. So any kind of generative AI applications there can actually help us a lot more in terms of how we approach it. But yes, this is pretty much how I see the ecosystem in Pakistan.
Thank you. I think we very comprehensively discussed this question. Um, Taking a slight shift, in what or how can generative AI be utilized for personalized financial planning and advice?
My question would be, would you want to take advice from anyone like that?
Why not? Maybe they're more trustworthy than human beings. I don't know.
So
Ali, I think eventually it will be more trustworthy than human beings.
right now it's not. So
Right now,
there's biases, and there is the whole component of AI. If you trust it that much, it can be very dangerous. So you have to be very very cognizant of the fact that AI has its own limitations, and sometimes the data that it gives you is absolutely incorrect. And when we use it, and I use it a lot, just to check it, it does give you highly incorrect answers as well. So yeah, in future.
I think the question right now is not whether we should rely upon it or not. The question is more, can we see AI being useful when it comes to financial planning and advice? So
it's
as you said, maybe in the future, Faisal, you
it's
think
already
there is?
happening, Sahar. It's already
Yes,
happening. Different part
yes.
of the world, there are fintechs who are applying for this financial planning within their application and giving the advices to their customers. So I have seen such applications in Europe, including UK, where Alia is, and including Canada, North America. So these are already happening. It's not something new. Maybe something not adaptable in our part of the world. For example, in Middle East, it's not much there, or in Pakistan, maybe it's not much there, but it's there already.
Yeah.
Different part of them.
Okay, so there's actually a lot for us to catch up on. I mean, as if you mentioned that it needs to make its way in the Middle East, then when it comes to the global South, we have some years until we catch up on it. Um, have we? I mean, one of the challenges, I think, I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason why Pakistan hasn't, or the banking sector in Pakistan hasn't fully focused on this area is. In fact, I should pose this as a question. Why has the banking sector, or to what extent has the banking sector in Pakistan, it's making use of generative AI? What are the drawbacks? And I think we've discussed the benefits.
Well, one of
Is
the
is there a
drawbacks
draw-
of the AI is the data security. it can be misused, it can be leaked out. So we need to have very stronger.
I would partially disagree, Arslan. Again, both of us are in Saudi Arabia. For the data security, there is a one standard of framework issued by Sadaya called. Arslan, you are on mute if you are talking something. Sorry, you are mute. We cannot hear you.
I think Faisal, I think you can continue.
Yes.
Maybe Arslan was
Yeah.
fixing
So, Arslan,
his.
I was referring to you the NDMO, which is National Data Management Office, which is the framework standard for the all the security of the data across the board in all kind of industries. So if you are governed by something regulations or framework, then the data security will be not taken care by the AI itself. It will be taken care by someone else, which is NDMO. Uh, so ethically, yes, we can say ethically AI has an issue where now everyone is talking about that ethically AI can go if it's without supervision can go beyond your control as well. So that's one of the challenge which someone needs to cope up. But in terms of cybersecurity or data security, I think we have global standards available in the market where we can comply with.
Can I
Can
just?
I? Yes,
Yes.
sorry, Alia, before I
Please.
move on, can I just interject here? As a lawyer, I know that unfortunately, we haven't yet implemented data privacy and protection law. It has been in draft form for a number of years. India actually implemented it recently, and usually when India implements a piece of legislation or statute, Pakistan also does it. But I think the last couple of years have been disruptive for the country. So this is one piece of important legislation that has not been implemented in Pakistan, and I think it should. I don't see why there's a delay. I think we know why there's a delay because the focus is on other things at the moment. So as a lawyer, I can actually comment that we need to implement that law to give more confidence to all industries and sectors who want to deploy and incorporate generative AI in their industries. Sorry, Alia, I cut you.
No, that's fine. So just adding on to that, I think from the potential, technological issues, I think the first, of course, as you mentioned, is data transmission. Also, the lack of privacy. But when we look at it from an overall ethical perspective, I think one of the main areas which nobody seems to be looking at the ethical and legal guidelines that we need to have in place as a country and as organizations. And we don't seem to be focused on that at all currently. So, which essentially means that we would be landing ourselves in a lot of trouble in terms of being users or being developers or being enablers. And now, because the world is essentially coming together in terms of how some of these areas are being regulated, and some of the regulations are already out there, like the European Union AI Act, and so many others as well. So I think from a potential challenge that I see is that we are not ready in any way in terms of the management of risks, and these risks can be also linked to, for example, if, the policies and development and the fundamental rights, financial exclusion rather than inclusion, the whole component of underdeveloped IT infrastructure in Pakistan, that would definitely create problems. And there are so many others. So I'm just picking on a few that are clear issues right now.
I think you make very valid points, and these should be sort of noted in our by the experts in our industry. So we've spoken about challenges, where we're at, but what are some of the emerging trends in generative AI that could impact the future of banking in Pakistan? Firstly, um, yeah, I think let's start with Pakistan and then speak about what's happening across the globe. So, Faisal, Alia, any of you want to take this?
Now, there are too many things happening. I don't know where to start. So So I think from strategy and data enablement, from modeling to evaluations, from deployment and monitoring, there are it's like an ocean. You see, it's a new area, but there are so many possibilities of use cases when you start applying it, and it can be applied as I earlier mentioned into all aspects of the front, the middle, and the enablers. Um, if we just pick, for example, the front office, you have the sales, you have marketing, you have customer support, you have relationship management. But for example, the funding market, in funding market, how do you summarize funding markets is one area where you can absolutely utilize generative AI. Then on investment research, because this is something extremely important, it also covers the risk aspect of another area. So even if you just look at the front office, there are so many use cases. You look at virtual bankers, you look at managers who are virtual, um, with chatbots, and you have marketing. So it's literally an ocean of areas where you can actually apply.
Faisal, would you like to add anything?
I think Alia covered most part of the it, and as we discussed earlier, uh, or Alia said earlier, that we are not ready for such kind of innovation at the moment. If we are talking about Pakistan perspective, you just mentioned PDPL, which is implemented most part of the world personal data privacy law, which is not yet there. So without having the base set in Pakistan, it will be very risky to have such kind of innovation or technology to be implemented without having any regulations in hand.
That's
So
right.
first
In
we need
fact,
to apply the PDPL, then NDMO kind of thing, where we have a standard. Recently, Pakistan Ministry of IT announced Cybersecurity Authority something. So we are going at the very beginning level of the standards at the moment. So let us have some maturity in terms of our standards and framework before applying such innovation.
you're right. I mean, there is so much potential and resources, but we need to sort of get our house in order and start with the basics and implement the basics very soon. I mean, as in the beginning, as we discussed, that the world is sort of growing and advancing in the sector at a very fast pace, and we need to catch up. We need to get our
I
basics
can give
right.
you very small examples, sir. For example, we have implemented AI with one of the giga projects in Saudi Arabia, where they have 70 resources just to initiate the projects within the organization. They have daily basis 5,000 projects opening within the organization. They have many systems, and they have 70 resources, and they were unable to meet the SLA to opening these. So we implemented the AI intelligent automation. We automate all their processes, and we are able to make this process within 2 hours rather than they were taking more than 1 day, and they save $11 million.
See, that's
So
that's something we should
that's what
look.
value we need to foresee for within our industries.
Exactly, exactly. This is what I was going to say, that right now, perhaps, some of us are deterred by the challenges and the costs when it comes to introducing and deploying AI, but we need to look at the long-term benefits, which is saving on cost. But
Exactly.
here, I think something that developing a young country like Pakistan with a young youth population, I think maybe something we're wary of is if we deploy generative AI, is that going to replace human resources? So that's always, I think maybe that's an ethical consideration, or maybe that's a
That's the
hesitation.
mindset. I always, whenever this question arises, I always ask. 100 years ago, there was a no transport system. There was a horse cart, and there used to be a one skill called a horseshoe maker. So things different, cars coming. uh, Where are all these people? They change their trade. So we are not going to replace anyone. So, for example, if we automate the process with one of the giga project, these 70 people resources they are utilizing somewhere else and more productive. So it's not we replace them; it's what we give them more productive work.
You're right. You're right. In fact, this was one of the hotly debated topics in the conference, AI conference I attended last week. To what extent will AI, can AI replace? I mean, there's always something new that there's always room, right? There's always room to deploy human resources as well as technological resources. And I think what we should stress on is, as you mentioned, Saudi is investing 50 billion in AI. And I think Arslan mentioned, and you also right now mentioned the cost saving that eventually will take place. Um,
I
it's
would actually like to add
yeah.
more on something. So I have a little bit of a different perspective on this facet. On the one hand, when we talk about any kind of technology coming in, it does mean that there will be a shift in the future jobs. The shift does mean that some of the jobs that are here today will not be there tomorrow. And the new jobs which are coming in will definitely compensate for the jobs lost. So there will be a balance in terms of the new jobs coming in. Now the new jobs which are going to come in, the whole spectrum that will open up requires upskilling of the people that have been doing the old jobs. So the transformation and transition would require to be in place. The challenge that I see in Pakistan is that we have a huge population, and 60% of that population is actually under 27 years of age. The problem is with the skill development. We do not have skilled resources at any level which can provide and add value to the industries, to the country. So the problem that we are facing is a much bigger problem in our youth in the right way. So whether it's education, whether it's the quality of education, whether it is looking at possibilities of technical expertise and skill development, or strategy by the government, which you can see in countries across the region who have been working on this for the last 25 years, how to take the youth forward, how to skill them, and how to utilize that skill internally within Pakistan and externally export it as well. So that you create a real ecosystem where one of the major resources that you are providing is actually skilled human resource. We are just not there, and we are not even looking at it even now.
Um, Alia, you've made some very valid points. I was speaking to somebody early in the morning, and that's exactly what they said, that we're already facing brain drain. Coupled with that, the resources that we have, our education sector, and I was also speaking to somebody who's an educationist, and she said we're centuries behind. Our education system also needs an overhaul. Our academia needs an overhaul. So brain drain coupled with the lack of skilled training amongst our resources is an issue. And I met some sort of employers who are in the tech sector last week at the conference, and they said that they actually have job, work, and projects. But now the problem is, at this point in time, they cannot find skilled resources. So we're actually seeing the effects of brain drain in our country. Um, what are I'll just move on to, because we're 15 minutes short. What are some of the common misconceptions about generative AI in banking or generally, and how can these be addressed?
Misconceptions. I think the first one is that it's going to replace you as a person. Like it's somehow going to be, it's a monster comes in and can do anything and everything. It's not like in movies. It doesn't work like that. I think it's a tool which enables you to do your work more efficiently, make you more productive. You can utilize it the way you want. So I think I think the worst ones, I think, is that, people may think of it as some kind of monstrosity taking over the world and taking over everything. Well, if it
You
does, it
make it
does.
sound like Godzilla. Yes.
It does, yeah. So I think it just sort of takes me back to the time when computers were introduced. Anybody and everybody who was trying to touch a computer would think one button and I touch, and then somehow the whole thing is going to blast off. So they were scared to touch a computer as well. So I do think it's the same, fear of the unknown hitting you a lot. So it's always good to know what is this, how does it work, use the tool, play with it, and see how you actually become comfortable with it.
Right. In fact, another discussion that I was a part of was, when internet came or emails came, it was, oh, but why do we need emails? We can do everything manually in writing over the phone. Oh, why do we need to be online after we've left the office? So a lot of misconceptions. I mean, to be honest, right now we're at a stage where we've seen a lot of technological advancements. I mean, yes, there's a lot more to come, but the huge shock that we've seen, whether it was the World Wide Web, email, social media, we've seen. So anything new will not be as big of a shock as people who worked in the 70s or 80s have seen. And Faisal, I think we both discussed something, a message to the regulators or the regulatory bodies in Pakistan. One, we mentioned that they need to, as a basic step, they need to enforce and implement the law when it comes to data privacy. But since, as you know, State Bank is the chief regulator of the banking sector, what role do you and Alia see State Bank playing in promoting generative AI in banking?
Faisal, can you go first or should
I thought no, you can start, please.
Okay.
I will follow.
So State Bank as a regulator is a very invested regulator, as I see it. It has always come up with very good directions in terms of how things need to be taken forward in terms of technology as well. Um, how they can contribute is very simply creating two segments. One is creating ethical and legal guidelines for banks to follow, creating possibility of high risk, medium risk, low risk AI models, making sure that if they are high risk, the whole component of certification around it is taken up, and there is a whole process and format to be followed by all organizations, all the industry. So I think from the regulator perspective, the first component has to be on the governance of it. So the governance component will incorporate the ethical guidelines, the legal guidelines, which need to be taken up by the whole industry. That's the first part of it. The second part can be looking at the possibilities, because when we utilize AI effectively, we may be able to um, work more towards, for example, financial inclusion. It can be the greatest equalizer and it can also be the greatest disruptor as well. So, understanding and having the right resources to head this component within the state bank would be very helpful, because that element essentially needs to be there. As a regulator, it can direct commercial banks to deploy AI, for example, to detect any kind of cyber threats. It can direct on the compliance net frameworks. It can direct on AML, KYC, and how we can utilize AI-based solutions. Also, any kind of technology which can detect and prevent frauds. So there are so many elements, and then having a structured, focused approach towards the targets with the industry would accelerate the utilization of it. But for that, they need to have their structures right first. They need to have the right experts in place who can help and guide, and then also monitor and evaluate.
Yes, that's a very good response, and I think a follow-up question to that is, how can mid to small size banks deploy AI, generative AI, in their systems without breaking the bank, without spending too much? If they feel that this is a cost that they can right now not really focus on, is there an option for them to still make use of generative AI but without spending too much?
So
I think they,
before Faisal, you respond to both questions. Just one quickly. I talk too much. PBA, I think the Pakistan Banking Association
Yes.
should be used as a platform to provide some of these things which are available with the big banks, and then of course the fintech companies which are connecting with the banks, the small startups which have great solutions as well. All these things can help. But over to Faisal now. Thank you.
uh, so basically, for the AI, I think yes, we know that bank need AI, but this is not the mindset where of the organization where they use such kind of innovation or technology. So they can use for different use cases compared to the financial inclusion, which Alia was talking, is more towards fintech side role. So regulator or rather than small banks, you need to target the fintechs and new startups where they can utilize this innovation technology. Uh, Now regarding the regulator question you asked, one of the area I think Alia missed was the education side of the resources. Since you talk about the brain drain and then we are short of the resources, so before going into that regulated industry through the central bank, they should also enforce or direct that what is the minimum requirement of the resources you need to be able to maintain or manage and operate such kind of infrastructure in your organization. So this is minimum standard should be created for the educational or certification of the resources as well from regulator. I know this is not directly their job, but indirectly this is they need to make sure that we are producing something quality within our industry and we are accountable what we are opting for.
Thank you. I think my final question would be, how can banks measure the success of deploying generative AI in their systems?
It depends on the use case. Uh, what use case we are talking. So, for example, if we are talking about the customer support side or end user experience side, so if your customer satisfaction reach above than used to be before AI, then that's mean this is the measurement tool you are going to apply. So, for example, without AI, if I have 50 agents in my call center and they are responding to their complaints over the email and taking minimum 24 hours, with AI, maybe you will be able to respond to them within 1 hour of the 1,000 complaints at a time. So this is kind of the difference between the using the technology and without using that technology. And this is the way you can measure your customer satisfaction. This will improve your customer satisfaction somehow.
Thank you. I agree. Alia, if you have, do you have anything further to add before I wind
No,
up?
that's fine. I think I tend to agree with what Faisal has said on this one. Thank you.
So thank you both of you for taking out the time and joining today's session. It was a shortest session, but I think the topic was very niche, and I think we've covered the topic from all aspects. I hope this proves to be a useful and interesting webinar to those of our audience who were listening to it live or who will later watch our recording. So thank you again, and hopefully speak to both of you on another session in the near future.
Inshallah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a patient hearing. Professor, thanks a lot. Good to see you here.
Same here. Likewise.
Thank you. Have a
Thank you,
good
Have
sir.
a good day,
Take care.
everyone. Bye.
Assalam.